Jack Kemp Foundation is working with young people in Washington, D.C. We're working with leaders on the national, state, and local stage. And this is our annual fundraiser. And we need to build up the coffers of the Kemp Foundation. It's not an endowed entity. This is a 501c3 that we began in 2009. And if you will permit me, I think this is a cool opportunity. You all will decide. I would like to auction off a football signed by everybody who participated on the stage this evening. So we have a signed football by Vice President Mike Pence, Tim Scott, James Lankford, J.C. Watts, Jeff Kemp, Anquan, Boldin, who else? Hugh, Hewitt, Kathy McMorris-Rogers. Did I miss anybody? So this is the 2017 Kemp Kemp Leadership Award Dinner Football. And I'm throwing in one other thing. This is a photo that I found in our files. It's signed by my dad, and it says, "Best wishes from Jack Kemp." He was back in the, hey, Mom, why did you marry this guy? Mom said she didn't hear anything I said up until that moment. But if you all will permit me a little bit of business, I would like to auction this off. The proceeds obviously go to the Jack Kemp Foundation, but we really are trying to engage exceptional leaders both at the highest political level but also on the ground. And so these two things are a package deal, and I would like, it's hard for me to see, so I'm going to hold that there, and I'm going to start the bidding. Just hold up your hand if you're willing to bid at the appropriate level, and I'm going to start the bidding at $2,500 for these two things. Anybody? Okay, the lady right there. We're going to $3,000. Here. Yes, sir. Thank you. We're going to $3,500. Mr. Stewart, thank you. We're going to $4,000. Thank you. $4,500. We're doing well. My goal is to get to $5,000. I'd like to get past it. We're at $4,000. Oh, right there. I got $4,500. I got $5,000. Do I have $5,500? Mr. Reed, thank you. Do I have $6,000? We're past our goal, so thank you. $6,000. Thank you. $6,500. $6,500. $6,500 going once. I've got $6,500. Do I have $7,000? $7,000. Thank you. It's nice to have a little energy. Thank you. $7,500. We're not going to carry on this on too long. It's valuable. I'm not sure it's that. $7,500. Thank you, Scott Stewart. All right, we're at $7,500. $8,000. $8,000. We have $7,500. Going once. Going twice. Scott Stewart, thank you very much, Scotty. Way to go, Scott. Scott Stewart. There you go, Scott. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it, brother. Merry Christmas. We appreciate it, Scott. So I don't know if you all know this or not, but there's been some controversy not only in the political world but also in the football world. And while I think football is still phenomenally popular, there are challenges. My dad dreamed of being Bob Waterfield when he was growing up. Bob Waterfield was the quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams. Hey, Hugh, where were they before LA? Cleveland. But my dad wanted to be Bob Waterfield. He became Jack Kemp. Football was his path, not only to football, but to politics. And obviously, football's been a part of our family. Playing in the Canadian Football League for 8 years was a great privilege for me and a connection to my dad and to my brother, who played for 11 years. And I'd like to bring the panel up, starting with my brother, Jeff Kemp, who played for 11 years in the NFL, played at Dartmouth College, and has been a champion for marriage and strengthening families in his years since college. Jeff, come on up. Thanks, brother. You're in the first seat. Next, we've got former Congressman J.C. Watts, who is House Republican Conference Chair, as I mentioned. J.C. played at the University of Oklahoma. And Jeff and I, when we were in high school, we played in a wishbone offense, which meant that we had to hand the ball off all the time. J.C. didn't have to hand it off as much as Jeff and I did because he could do something with the football. He also went on to play in the Canadian Football League, and I think he was a little bit better than I was. They won the Grey Cup in
Played in it in 81.
You played in it in 81 with the Ottawa Rough Riders, right? So we're thrilled to have J.C. Watts here. And Anquan Boldin is really unique. He retired at the beginning of this season because he recognized that he had a calling like Jack Kemp and Ernie Barnes. Anquan recognized that he had a calling that went beyond football. He prepared for it while he was playing football, and he's been living it this year. He's been involved with something called the Players Coalition, and they've been talking about the issues around equality of opportunity and justice for all in this country. So Anquan, we're thrilled that you're here. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And finally, to moderate the conversation while you all are enjoying dinner, we've got the inimitable Hugh Hewitt, who has a phenomenal voice. He's a lawyer, a radio show host, an author. And Hugh, we're really thrilled to have you here, even though you like the Cleveland Browns and not the Buffalo Bills. Thanks, Hugh.
Thank you very much, Jimmy.
Thanks, Hugh.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, Anquan. We're going to run the 2-minute offense, the media offense here. A lot of questions in 20 minutes, and then you can get to your cars and go home and think about the amazing inspiration words from Senator Scott and Vice President Pence. Two things to start, though. All this Oklahoma and Clemson talk. We all know Ohio State got screwed, right? We all know that, don't we? I'm wearing my Cleveland Browns tie, my orange tie. I am season ticket holder since '99 and going since '65, so I'm not authorized, but I'm entitled to ask Anquan, will you come out of retirement for the Browns? we need a little help. 1 win in 2 years. First question. It's the season of Christmas. The It's a Wonderful Life movie is based on Jimmy Stewart never having lived. What would your life be like, Anquan Boldin, if you had not had football?
It's a great question. It's hard for me to imagine. Football has always been a part of my life. My dad played ball at Georgia Tech. My Sundays were filled with going to church and coming home and spending that time with the family watching football. You know, I don't know where I would be without football because it has afforded me a lot of great fortune. It has allowed me to meet a lot of great people. So I've built a lot of great relationships over the years. It has allowed me financially to secure my family's future. And it has also allowed me to help others. So I honestly don't know where I would be without the opportunity of football.
J.C. Watts, no football. What happens to J.C. Watts?
Probably would have ended up in the military. In my neighborhood, athletics was a way out. I'm grateful that football, boxing, basketball, baseball taught me a lot of fundamentals on how to do life better, how to not allow your dysfunctions to become your normal. A lot about relationships. So I'm grateful for what athletics did for me. But had I not played football and went on to the University of Oklahoma, probably would have ended up in the Air Force.
Okay, good result there. Jeff, for you, it's a little bit different. The whole family, the foundation, the reason we're here is football. What would your life have been like if you even talked to your dad about what it would have been like without football?
Oh my gosh, I probably would have been a boring economist or something. Because he talked about economics a lot. I majored in economics. I was in a job interview at Dartmouth with Morgan Stanley Investment Bank, and they said, you want to commit 85 hours a week to this job. Will this be number one in your life? Is this the most important thing to you? And I said, yeah, I'd rather play pro football, but sure, that'd be really good to work for you. And they said, thank you, that'll end the interview, and kicked me out right away. Good thing I was a very fortunate free agent. Football taught me to be a leader. it taught me that leadership is persevering and giving the team an attitude that nothing will stop us. We can always come back. We're never behind too far, right? It also taught me how much you need other people. You need coaches, you need trainers, you need equipment people, you need offensive linemen. Quarterbacks cannot do a thing without offensive linemen. And the sacrifices that other people make so that you can play the game are phenomenal. And then secondly, football put me in a place to meet people from all over the world and from all walks of life. And racially, we were blessed with many, many black brothers and sisters because of football. Families that were friends because of football. Cookie Gilchrist, Ernie Warlick, Ernie Ladd, these guys all came to our house when I was a little boy. You know, I got a train set from Cookie Gilchrist. And then those were the guys who walked out on the New Orleans All-Star game in 1965 when the racial discrimination in New Orleans was brutal. And they said, we're not playing the game here because we can't get a cab. They won't serve us food. They won't let us in these restaurants. And they said, we're not going to play the game. And Dad and the white guys had to like wake up and say, whoa, America's not what we thought Abraham Lincoln made it to be. And so they went with these guys and said, let's move the game to Houston. So that world of football opened up Dad's heart, and he called himself a bleeding heart, to the fact that all Americans don't have equal opportunity, and yet they have amazing talent and gifts and stories, and you need to get to know the stories. In the locker room, you get to know the stories. On airplanes, you get to know the stories.
Now, it's no surprise to everyone the football is under stress. The title of this panel is The American Idea in Football. And not just the NFL, but from the little pony league all the way up to the NFL now, it's under stress because of injuries, because of competing interests. How important is it to the fabric of America that the games stay part of it, Anquan?
I would say this. Football has taught me a lot. Like he said, it teaches you to be a leader. It teaches you how to work hard. Teaches you about dedication. But I think the thing that football taught me was relationships. Like he said, you need other people in order to succeed. You know, and there's a lot of self-proclaimed, self-made people. But that's so far from the truth. I think if you take a survey of anybody that's ever been successful, they've had people to help them along the way. And I think that's one of the things that football has taught me, at least.
JC, would you let your sons play today, starting out young? Would you say go for it?
I would. I've got two boys. They both played. I did not allow them to play until one was in the 5th grade, one was in the 6th grade. I didn't start playing tackle football until I was in 8th grade. So I think there's a lot of challenges that athletics, especially football, is dealing with today. I think the league and the medical profession's a lot smarter about how to deal with some of these things than they were, when Jeff and I came along in terms of head injuries and other injuries.
It was like this. How many fingers?
Yeah.
Go back in.
And they say, how many fingers? You say 4. They say, go back in.
Okay.
So I think the league, sports folks from the medical profession to the teams, I think they're much smarter today on how to deal with those things. I had a son that played 2 years in the National Football League. So the wellness, the diet, it's all totally different today than it was 25, 30 years ago. So yeah, I would. I'd take precaution like I did when they were coming along in the 5th and 6th grade, but I would let them play.
Jeff, one of the many Cleveland Browns quarterbacks we've had was named Colt McCoy, and his dad's a famous high school football coach in Texas. Came on my radio show once and said, football coaches in America are the new missing dads. They are providing character and direction and opportunity for a lot of young men who don't have dads. How much do you agree with that and disagree with that, and are we overlooking that in the debates about politics and football these days?
Well, teachers and coaches are some of the most important people in the country next to parents, moms and dads. And I think that coaches, when they get carried away with wanting to accomplish something for themselves, can be very damaging to kids. But when they want to teach character, teach how to compete, teach the need of brotherhood and teamwork, and then take a kid by the side and say, you know what, I think you have some real potential. I just like to see more dedication out of you. Or I love the way you encourage your teammates. That role of a coach is one of the most important. So I think we need football. We need all sports. We need to kind of ramp it down a little bit and let junior hires and high schoolers not have to be professional and calm down a little bit. Parents, stop getting our egos satisfied through sports. But we should affirm coaches, and we as parents ought to pull them aside, not because our kid didn't play or we didn't like the call by the ref. That stuff is all okay. But if the coach is chewing kids out, using derogatory cussing language, all about his winning, the league ought to pull him out. And secondly, I want the NFL to keep going further to prevent targeting and to protect the players. And we need to transfer that to high school and youth football and just have zero tolerance for using the helmet as a weapon and players attacking at the knees with their body. We got to change the sport back to head up and play it the old-fashioned way, because it's going to shrink.
You know, Hugh,
if we don't do that, it's going to shrink.
And let me tell you the importance of coaches, whether or not you've got, a father in the home or you did have a father in the home. If I was to ask the people in this room tonight that played 8th grade football, if I ask you, who is your 8th grade football coach? You'd say, oh, that was Coach Woodson. If I ask you, who is your 8th grade English teacher? Let me see. You'd have to think about it. That's the influence that coaches can have on young men and young women. So they play an important role in spite of what home life is, simply because, you think the coach is the high priest. And so as Jeff said, the reason I didn't allow my sons to play it, in that second, third grade year, I was very cautious about that, is because that coach is important and fundamentals are important. Learning how to do it right at the outset, that is important. And I think sometimes we allow that to happen too soon.
Now, Anquan, let me ask you about being in the spotlight. The most famous Cleveland Browns fan in America is Condoleezza Rice, because when she was growing up in Birmingham and they were blowing up churches, she looked at Jimmy Brown and said, I'm going to become a Browns fan, and followed him her whole life. It's in her memoir. Were you aware, you got the Super Bowl ring, 3 times a Pro Bowler, were you aware always that kids were watching you and that it mattered how you conducted yourself?
Yes, that's something that I've always been aware of. I can remember being in high school, my junior year of high school. My nephew at the time, he was probably about 5 years old, and everything I did on the football field, he would mimic at the gate. So I had a pretty good idea that I was being watched. Wasn't completely sure by who all was watching me, but I knew that I was being watched, and I knew that I had to carry myself in a certain manner.
Do you think that players today are aware of that even more? Is it changing the way that they deal with the camera and the pressure?
I think some players are aware of it. Some players are, some players aren't. I heard Charles Barkley make a statement one time that, that he was not a role model, and that he shouldn't be considered, one of the people that kids look to, or kids should be raised by their parents in the home. And, the thing I have to say about that, like, as an athlete, you are a leader, no matter whether you want to be or not, because somebody is watching you. How you lead depends on you.
Who did you watch growing up?
My favorite player growing up was Walter Payton. I love the way that he played the game of football, but I also loved the way that he treated people off the field. I think that stuck with me more than the touchdowns that he scored and the records that he broke.
JC, who'd you watch?
Before ESPN and Fox Sports, you had 3 networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. Oklahoma, the CBS game of the week was always the Dallas Cowboys. Roger Staubach, Drew Pearson. I could tell you all the names of those guys. And when you talk about players being heroes, you don't have your kids running around the house saying, we want to be like Warren Buffett. You have You have your kids saying, we want to be like Mike, we want to be like Anquan. So that's the influence that athletes have on the youth of America.
Jeff, you and Jimmy have an interesting experience, as do your sisters, of having athletes all around and seeing both sides of them. But other than your dad, who reached out and touched your life and changed it in that world of athletes?
Well, it was while I was playing pro football, it was Reggie White at the Philadelphia Eagles. And
Why?
fascinating thing about Reggie, we had a broken sauna in Veterans Stadium. And so therefore it didn't get heated up, and we used it as our private meeting room. And Reggie would go around and recruit guys in the morning, say, come on, let's start the day with God. And we'd get in there and he would say a prayer and get us started. He would never, ever, ever say a prayer without saying, dear God, I want to thank you for my sweet and precious wife, Sarah. So no man I've ever known has honored marriage as well as Reggie White. And he lived up to that in the way he treated her, in the way he raised his kids. And he preached that to every single guy on the team. I know guys that were sleeping around with many, many women during their pro football times, but they respected Reggie White. They saw his role model. And when they left football and married a woman, they went back to church. They went back to Jesus. They went back to their marriage. And they're raising solid kids. In fact, every single Tuesday, Reggie would go to Richard Allen Apartments in Philadelphia and bring a bunch of players. And they would set up food, and they would feed people in the neighborhood, and then he would give messages to the kids and inspire them about how to live life. And he was there every single week, so it's not like one time, consistency. So, Anquan mentioned relationships in football. Reggie White was probably the most influential person that I knew. And if he were around today, he would be doing what Anquan is doing, which is taking his platform and using it for justice, using it for opportunity, using it to unite players. The difficulty, and I want to turn to this topic of the NFL protests, is that Colin Kaepernick, for all of his courage and the fact that he was upset about something in America, and I commend him for that, he took a stand and he got the attention, but he didn't have a game plan or a clear explanation for it the way Anquan does. Anquan has been picking up that along with other players, Doug Baldwin and others, and they are saying, let us make a solution, not just a protest. And I'm not against protesting. Our nation wouldn't be in very good shape today if we didn't have some protests. But unfortunately, the players didn't understand that they were protesting in the public's eye against the flag and military when they are not. Many of these guys have military parents. They respect the military, but it's not getting through the Twitter feed. It's not getting through the news. Anquan and others are working on solutions, and I want to hear about that.
That's what I was going to, let's go there. Anquan, tell us what you're doing in the community, what the organization is about.
Well, we've started a players coalition, and for us, we've decided to attack three key issues we feel like are important in this nation. One being community and police relations, the second being criminal justice reform, and the third is education. We feel like those areas are areas that we've fallen short in this country, and we feel like, we as players can use our platform to bring about a difference in those areas.
And so that predates the controversy about the NFL. You've been doing this for a number of years, haven't you?
Yes. I started my foundation, Anquan Boldin Foundation, 14 years ago, and we've been doing work in the nonprofit world for quite some time. I come from a less fortunate area. Majority of the people where I come from live below the poverty line. They make less than $20,000 a year. For myself, I know that had it not been for sports, that I would have not gone to college. My parents couldn't afford to send me to college, so in order for me to go to college, I had to get a scholarship or else. So, me and my wife, those are some of the issues that are near and dear to our hearts. So I think probably about 6 years ago, we did a $1 million endowment to ensure that kids from communities like mine will be able to continue their education even when we're dead and gone.
That is terrific. Last question. Senator Scott brought it up, Vice President brought it up, race in America, James Lankford brought it up. Athletes have a unique role to play here, sports have a unique role to play here. What is that role, JC? And I'll ask you, Jeff, and I'll finish with you, Anquan. What is that role?
Well, Hugh, again, I think all of us have talked about relationships, And relationships cover a multitude of sins. I mean, in the locker room, when you get to know people, when you're in trenches, and I think you feel this, or you get this also. And I think the military. I ran against a military guy in one of my primaries, and I had friends that came up to me that said, "JC, we love you, but we've got to be with Ed because they served with him. They were in the trenches with him. You can get killed in the military. You can get killed in training processes." And so in sports, relationships are extremely important. You depend on the guy to the right and to your left. The quarterback depends on the offensive lineman. And so I think the relationship part of it, we miss that in the real world. And secondly, in athletics, we all are dysfunctional. It's just a matter of degree. I'm probably more dysfunctional than Jeff, and Jeff's probably more dysfunctional than Anquan, and Anquan's probably more dysfunctional than you, but we all are dysfunctional. It's just a matter of degree. And think about it. You never had to teach your kids how to be bad. They come out of the mother's womb, and you're bent the wrong way. We all are. And in athletics, you are exposed when you allow your dysfunction to become your normal. I'll study film on Jeff and Anquan, and I'll look at film enough on them to know what their weaknesses are. And if they don't strengthen their weaknesses, I'll expose it, and I'll beat them every time. And so in athletics, you're taught not to allow your dysfunctions to become your normal. In the real world, we say, that's just the way they are. And when we say that's just the way they are, what we're saying is, I don't want to be corrected, I don't want to be held accountable, and there's no humility. And so in athletics, you are faced with humbling experiences every weekend and every game. And so you in the huddle, I honestly never thought about what denomination my teammates were. If they were Jewish or Muslim or Baptist or Assembly of God, Catholic. That wasn't an issue. I was the first black quarterback of my high school team. I had some of my buddies that quit the team because they said they didn't feel right playing behind a black quarterback. But the head coach, who was white, said, we're going to play the best team. My white teammates rallied around me, and we became a pretty doggone good high school football team. So, obviously race exists in athletics as well, but I think you understand the importance that no man is an island and no man lives alone. So you want to know about him, you want to know about him. So it just, when you're in the trenches with people every day and you win and lose and cry and bleed and get injured together, it creates a bond that you look over a lot of those superficial things.
Jeff?
Well, athletics brings us together on the teams. I don't know that it does something to bring the fans together. They may enjoy things in the stadium, but I liked what Senator Langford said and what Senator Scott is doing, challenging people to invite people to dinner that don't look like you or come from the same neighborhood, and let your kids intersperse and get to know other kids and find out we are human. Yes, we're all flawed, but there's God's grace and dignity in every one of us. And I think that we need to apply a rule that we apply at the dinner table. You can disagree and you can debate, but you don't call people names. And you don't label them. And as much as I respect Senator or Congressman, Governor, and Vice President Pence, and many of the policies that he spoke about, when the President of the United States used a cuss language to speak about the NFL players that were protesting, I feel like he was in his own right as an American to say, I think they should be fired. That's a line he's used on TV before, and some would say that as a business. Your business is the NFL. We didn't give it to you to make a political statement. By the same token, I support the players who make a statement. I just wish they hadn't done it around the flag. Do it before or afterwards. But I think we cannot have that language like the president had. And I think that's immoral. And that won't bring us together. But he probably has some views that need to be listened to by some other people, and they have some views that he needs to listen to, and I have some views that need to be shaped by sitting down with Anquan, and you could learn a few things from me, maybe a couple less than you could teach me, but we could all learn from getting together with one another. And I think that principle of what would you say at the dinner table ought to start making sense in America. So if you want to do something with me, let's not label anyone from any party. Let's just say their ideas are good or bad and fight those ideas as Dad did. Steve Largent, when he came to Congress, he went to every single Democratic office, he was a Republican, and met them because he said, we're on the same team. My dad said the Democrats were the party, the mama party. And the Republican Party was the daddy party. And they both play a role. You can figure out what that means yourself. Men and women are equal. We need both moms and dads. But Steve Largent went out of his way to meet every single Democrat and say, we're on the same team. We're working for the same goal. We may have different ideas. Race in America needs to become a melting pot again, where we listen, where we humble ourselves, and we want to find out the story that every other person has in America. But let's just come into this room. Let's spread the idea to no longer label people, but talk about their ideas and get to know them.
And Hugh, and let me also add two things. One, I knew Jack had the great privilege of knowing Jack. Came to Oklahoma in 1990, spoke at a state Republican convention. I was running for statewide office that year. When Jack Kemp spoke, I said, me too. I can follow that guy, and I became a Jack Kemp disciple. Jack Kemp was way ahead of his time, just way ahead of his time. He was, Jack had a special sauce,
Yeah.
as I say, and then when you consider the fights that we have in the locker room, again, and you all will hear on TV occasionally to where maybe the Bills or the Cowboys or the Ravens, they had an issue with some player or something happened in the team, and what do? They call a team meeting. And the team gets together and they talk about it and they hash it out, but when they walk through that door, it's not Anquan's team, it's not Jeff's team, it's not JC's team, it's our team. We're going to war together. Politics has become so tribalistic.
Yeah.
It's we determine how we treat people by whether or not they agree with us on taxes or parental choice in education or life or marriage. That's not the example that God. And let me tell you, I've looked for loopholes in Scripture trying to say, okay, is there something that tells me I shouldn't like? I've never found it. It's not giving me a loophole to be ugly to Anquan and be ugly to Jeff, in spite of the fact that they may disagree with me. But athletics, again, we deal with our issues in the locker room so that when we hit the field, we're a team. It's
united.
Not I or me. We're united.
Last question to you, Anquan, and then we will be done. The two greatest optimists in American politics in my lifetime have been Ronald Reagan and Jack Kemp. That's what defined them. They were optimists. Are you an optimist about the league, about the country, about race relations, about the work that you're doing?
I definitely am optimistic. I think sports plays an important part in this conversation because I think sports sets the idea of what America should look like. You have all walks of life, different religions, different ethnicities coming together for one common goal. Like they said, if I'm on a team, it doesn't matter what you believe, what you look like. Our goal is to win. And we throw all of our differences aside and we come together and we work towards that one common goal. I've played on a team with Jews, I played on a team with Mexicans, I played on the teams with Indians, I played on a team with whites. It doesn't matter where you come from. We have one common goal, and I think that should be our goal as Americans, to come together as one and make this country better than what it is.
I can't top that. Please join me in thanking three great professionals, three great leaders. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Jeffrey. Jimmy.
Guys, can we get a quick picture? I really appreciate, Hugh, you doing this for us, Anquan, for you being here, JC, you've given so much to the nation. Jeff, you're all right.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. Just hold on 1 minute, and I will dismiss us properly. Is there a photographer in the house? Sweet. Let me see if I can hold my stomach in. Anybody who knows my dad had heard that a time or two? Thank you. Great. That's good, right? You need more? All right, cool. Hugh, thanks. Appreciate it. Anquan, great job. JC, appreciate it. Thanks, brother. Give you a hug later. So, listen, a couple just rules of order. One person from each table gets to take the centerpiece. My mom is Scottish, and she'll be very disappointed if we don't optimize the beautiful flower arrangement. And I've got to say something about our team. If you all could just sit for 1 minute, and then we're dismissed. 1 minute, and then we're dismissed. Shh. It's effective. I think I learned that from Speaker Ryan. So make sure that one person takes the floral arrangement, and I want you to know what we have coming up this year. Our Kemp Forum is our main program area. We have Kemp Forum events on economic policy. We're doing a project on exchange rates and the dollar. I know it's sexy. Everybody knows how much Jack Kemp loved to talk about the gold standard. We're talking about foreign exchange rates and how that impacts global markets and the U.S. market. Sean Rushton is running that for us. Sean, thank you for your work. We're also focusing on foreign policy, and we've got a great person at the Jack Kemp Foundation who I have to thank, Michelle Van Cleve, who does so much for the foundation, so much for me. She worked for my dad. She was in the W administration, the head of counterintelligence, right, Michelle? And Michelle she keeps me level and true. She's a great gift. I would also like you to give a round of applause to Gretchen Moss, Emma Watkins, and Hannah Wardell. I am very fortunate to have a great team, and they've done a wonderful job. Thank you all for being supportive for the Jack Kemp Foundation. And I just want to leave you with a quote from President Ronald Reagan, who in 1988 said something that I think applies tonight. It was a tribute to my dad, and the president was leaving office, and my dad was sitting there, my mom was next to him, and he said, well, I won't do the Reagan imitation, it's not very good. But he said, when you think of Jack Kemp, you think of one word, the cause. Jack will fight for that cause. Wherever he goes, at all times, he will champion the cause. We are part of a cause. It's greater than ourselves. It's not Jack Kemp's cause. It's the American cause. It's the American idea. Thank you for your support, your encouragement, and please stay engaged with us. We appreciate all of you being here. Have a great night. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Don't end it so soon. Don't leave me here sighing.